My name is Della Marsh, and I was 34, the morning I opened a spreadsheet my cousin had sent me and understood, in the specific cold way you understand things when numbers are your first language, that every figure on every page was invented. Not estimated, not approximated, invented. 72 months of reports, 72 months of careful formatting and professional-looking columns and a signature line at the bottom that read, "Prepared by Josephine Marsh, Estate Administrator." 72 months of fiction delivered to my inbox on the 15th of every month like clockwork. And underneath the fiction, in the actual accounts I pulled that morning, a number that had been building quietly for 6 years while I read the invented version and said thank you and moved on with my life. $112,000, our grandmother's money, gone. I sat at my desk for a long time with that number on my screen and my coffee going cold, and my grandmother's voice somewhere in the back of my mind saying the thing she always said when I was small and learning to add columns at her kitchen table. "Della," she said, "the numbers always tell the truth. You just have to ask them the right question." I had not asked the right question for 6 years. I was about to ask it now. Welcome back to Quiet Justice Stories, where the quiet ones finally get heard and the truth always arrives with paperwork. If you have ever trusted someone with something precious and discovered too late what that trust had been worth, this story is for you. Drop a comment below and subscribe so the next story finds you. My grandmother's name was Vera Marsh, and she was the person I came from in every way that mattered, not just genetically, in character. She was a woman who kept records the way other people kept faith, consistently, without exception, as a fundamental expression of who she was. Every bill she ever paid had a receipt. Every receipt had a date. Every date was entered into a ledger she kept in the kitchen drawer beside the phone, a green cloth-covered ledger that she updated every Sunday evening after dinner with the particular satisfaction of a woman who believed that order was a form of love. She was an accountant, retired by the time I knew her as a person rather than just a grandmother, but an accountant in the marrow, the kind of professional whose habits outlast the career by decades. I became a forensic auditor because of her, not because she told me to, because watching her work, watching her find the error in a restaurant receipt or catch a double charge on a utility bill or reconstruct a family budget from nothing more than a shoebox of crumpled slips, taught me that the numbers were always honest if you looked at them honestly. People lie. Numbers record the lie and wait. I have spent 9 years in forensic auditing, finding the places where the numbers waited too long and the damage got large. I do it for companies, for law firms, for trustees who suspect something is wrong but cannot find the specific wrong thing in the specific column. I am very good at finding it. I say this not to establish superiority over what my cousin did. I say it because it is the central irony of this story that the person Josephine chose to deceive for 6 years was the person professionally trained to detect exactly the kind of deception she chose. She knew what I did for a living. We had grown up together. She had been at my graduation. She had sent a card when I passed my certification. She knew. And she sent me fabricated reports for 72 consecutive months anyway. I have thought about that a great deal. Vera died in the spring, 6.5 years before the morning I opened the spreadsheet. She was 81, and her heart had been working harder than it should for 2 years, and the end, when it came, was not a surprise in the medical sense, but was entirely a surprise in the personal one, because you are never actually prepared for the specific silence that follows the person who taught you everything. She died on a Saturday. I drove to her house that afternoon and sat in her kitchen and looked at the green ledger still in the drawer beside the phone. The last entry was 3 days before she died. Electric bill, paid, receipt attached. That was my grandmother. The estate was not complicated in the way estates can be complicated. Vera had a house, a modest investment account, and a savings account that she had built over 40 years of careful living. Her will was clear and properly executed and left everything to be divided equally between her two granddaughters. Her two granddaughters were me and Josephine. Josephine was 30 at the time of the death, 4 years older than me, and she was the one who had stayed local while I had built my career in a city 3 hours away. She had been close to our grandmother in the physical sense, nearby, available for the Sunday dinners I could only attend at holidays, present for the daily rhythms of an old woman's life that distance had kept me from. She had been there. I want to give her that because it is true and because the truth matters, even when it is complicated. Josephine had been present for the years I had not been present, and I was aware of that asymmetry, and I carried some guilt about it, and that guilt, I understand now, was exactly the lever she used. When the estate needed an administrator, someone to manage the property sale, the account distributions, the paperwork that follows a death, Josephine volunteered. She said I had enough going on. She said she was already there. She said she would send me regular reports so I would always know exactly where things stood. I said thank you. I said I trusted her. I meant both. The first report arrived on the 15th of the following month. It was clean and professional. Itemized expenses, account balances, property sale progress, a distribution schedule showing what we would each eventually receive. I read it carefully. I am a forensic auditor. I read everything carefully, and the figures looked reasonable and the formatting was professional, and I sent back a reply that said, "This looks great. Thank you for handling this." She sent the same report, updated every month for 6 years. I read every one. I said thank you every time. I never once pulled the underlying account statements to verify the figures. I have thought about why. The honest answer is that grief does something to your professional instincts when the subject is personal. It creates a separation between the part of you that checks figures for a living and the part of you that sits in your grandmother's kitchen looking at the last entry in the green ledger. I did not apply my professional training to my cousin because applying it would have meant treating her as a subject rather than a family member, and I was not ready to do that. She counted on that. She was right to count on it. For 6 years, she was right. The audit did not start because I suspected Josephine. It started because I was updating my own financial records on a Tuesday morning, and I realized I had never actually received my distribution from the estate, not the full amount. I had received 2 partial payments in the first year, small amounts explained in the reports as interim distributions while the property sale finalized, and then nothing. The reports continued arriving every month, detailed and professional, showing ongoing management and account activity, and an estate that was apparently still in some stage of settlement. But no money had arrived in my account for 5 years. I had not noticed because the reports kept coming, and the reports said everything was in progress, and I trusted the reports. Sitting at my desk on that Tuesday, I tried to reconstruct exactly how much I should have received and could not do it quickly because I had no independent record of the underlying accounts. Only the figures Josephine had provided. So I went to get the underlying accounts. I called the bank where our grandmother had held her savings and investment accounts. I explained that I was a beneficiary of the estate and requested the account history. The representative asked for my documentation. I emailed the will and the estate transfer records while she waited. She came back and confirmed the accounts. She gave me the current balances. I wrote them down. Then I pulled up the most recent report Josephine had sent, the one that arrived 3 days earlier on the 15th, the same as always. And I compared the figures. The bank's figures and Josephine's figures were not in the same universe. The bank showed accounts that had been largely depleted over a period of years through a series of withdrawals. Josephine's report showed accounts that were stable and growing. I sat very still. Then I requested the full transaction history. I want to pause here because I know what some of you are feeling right now. You are feeling the particular sick recognition of a person who has just understood that something they assumed was stable was actually hollow and has been hollow for a long time, and they have been the last to know. If you have ever trusted a family member with something important and discovered too late what that trust was worth, you already know this feeling from the inside. Stay with me. Subscribe, so this story reaches you all the way to the end, because what I found in the transaction history changed everything I thought I knew about 6 years of Tuesday mornings and monthly reports and a cousin I had grown up with. The transaction history took 3 days to arrive by secure document transfer. I did not contact Josephine during those 3 days. I went to work, I ran my regular audits, I ate dinner and answered emails, and did everything a person does when she is waiting for documents that are going to confirm something she already knows and does not want to be confirmed. On the 4th morning, the documents arrived. I cleared my desk, I made coffee, I opened the files, and I built the audit the way I build every audit, systematically without conclusion until the evidence justifies one, working from the outside in until the center becomes unavoidable. The investment account. Vera had left an investment account with a balance of $187,000 at the time of her death. The account had been transferred to the estate and then to Josephine as administrator. Over the following 6 years, the account had been drawn down through a series of withdrawals, 18 of them, irregular in timing and amount, ranging from $3,000 to $14,000. The withdrawals totaled $147,000. The account currently held $40,000. The estate had never been formally closed. Josephine was still the administrator. She had been withdrawing funds from an estate account for 6 years, without distributing them to the beneficiaries, and without closing the estate, and without a court order authorizing the withdrawals. I cross-referenced each withdrawal against the reports she had sent me. The reports showed none of the withdrawals. The reports showed a stable account generating modest returns and awaiting final distribution. The reports were fiction, 72 of them, delivered to my inbox on the 15th of every month. I sat at my desk for a long time. Then I did the specific arithmetic of my situation. The estate's liquid assets at death were approximately $224,000 between the savings and investment accounts plus the proceeds from the property sale, which had finalized in year 2. My share at 50% should have been approximately $112,000. I had received $12,000 in the 2 partial distributions in year 1. I should have received $100,000 more. The withdrawals from the accounts over 6 years totaled $147,000. My grandmother's money in Josephine's account, while she sent me reports that said everything was fine. I opened my notepad to a fresh page. At the top I wrote one line: "Every number has a source. Find the source." That was something my grandmother said. I found the source. I did not call Josephine that evening. I called my colleague instead. Her name is Priya Subramaniam, and she is a forensic accountant who has worked financial fraud cases for 11 years, and who has a quality I needed specifically. She had seen every version of what Josephine had done, and she would not be surprised by any of it, which meant she would not be managed by any of it. I told Priya what I had found. She was quiet for a moment, then she said, "How long?" I said 6 years. She said, "How much?" I said 112,000. She said, "How often did she send reports?" I said, "Monthly, every 15th. Priya was quiet again. Then she said she wanted to see the reports against the transaction history side by side. I sent her everything that night. She called me the next morning. She said, "Della, this is not an oversight. This is not a bookkeeping error." She said every withdrawal was timed to avoid the reporting thresholds. She said the reports were designed by someone who understood how a legitimate estate report should look. She said whoever built these knew exactly what they were doing. I said, "I know." She said you need to decide what you want the outcome to be before you decide how to proceed. I thought about that for a long time. Here is what I wanted. I want to be honest about this because I think the wanting matters as much as the doing. I did not want to destroy Josephine. I want to be precise about that. She was my cousin. We had grown up in adjacent houses and shared a grandmother and spent summers at the same kitchen table, learning to add columns from the same woman. She had been at my graduation. I had been at hers. We had stood together at our grandmother's funeral and held each other's hands. I did not want to destroy her, but I also was not going to absorb $112,000 of my grandmother's money and call it the cost of trust. My grandmother had worked for 40 years to build what she left us. She had kept every receipt. She had updated the green ledger every Sunday. She had done it so that what she built would reach the people she loved. It had not reached me, and the person who had diverted it had been sending me professional-looking fiction on the 15th of every month for 6 years while I said thank you. That was not a misunderstanding. That was a decision made repeatedly across 72 months. You can love someone and still hold them accountable. You can grieve the relationship and still insist on the truth. I was going to do both. I did not set up an ambush. I want to be clear about that because I think the method matters. I called Josephine on a Wednesday afternoon and I used my normal voice and I said I had been going through some of my own financial records and I had a few questions about the estate and could we sit down together on Saturday? She said, of course. She said it immediately, warmly, without hesitation, which told me she did not know I had pulled the accounts. She thought Saturday was going to be a normal conversation. She had been sending me fiction for 6 years, and I had been receiving it without question, and she had no reason to expect that Saturday would be different from any other Saturday. I said I would come to her. She said she would make lunch. I said that was fine. I asked if she still had all the estate files, because I wanted to go through some of the original documents. She paused. One beat, barely perceptible. She said of course she had everything. I said, great, see you Saturday. I hung up and I sat with that one beat of pause for a long time. She had the files. She also had, somewhere in the preceding 30 seconds, understood that something had shifted. She did not know what. She was about to find out. Saturday morning I drove to Josephine's house with 2 folders. The first folder contained the real estate documents, the original will, the estate transfer records, the bank's transaction history, my audit, printed and tabbed, each withdrawal cross-referenced against the corresponding monthly report that had not mentioned it. The second folder contained Josephine's reports, all 72 of them, printed and stacked in order, the first on top, the most recent on the bottom. Priya sat in the passenger seat. She was there as my professional witness and as my colleague, and because I had learned from 9 years of forensic auditing that the most important room in any investigation is the one where the subject first understands they have been found. You want a witness in that room, not for drama, for accuracy. Josephine had made lunch. That is the detail I keep coming back to. She had made a proper lunch, sandwiches cut diagonally on a plate in the center of the kitchen table with napkins folded beside them. She had put out glasses and a pitcher of water. She had done the small domestic things that communicate welcome and normalcy and the assumption that this is an ordinary afternoon between 2 cousins who have known each other their whole lives. She looked at Priya with a question. I introduced Priya as my colleague and said she worked in financial documentation, and I had asked her to come along to help go through some of the estate records. Josephine's face did the thing I had been watching for since I pulled into her driveway. It stayed perfectly still. Not calm, still. The specific stillness of a person applying effort to their expression. I sat down. I placed the second folder on the table, Josephine's reports stacked neatly, visible but closed. I said I wanted to start with a simple question. She said, "Of course." I said, "When did you expect the estate to close?" She said it had been complicated. She said there had been some administrative delays. She said she had been meaning to discuss a timeline. I said I understood and that I had been going through my own records, and I had pulled the account statements directly from the bank to help me get a clearer picture. The stillness on her face became something else. I opened the first folder. I placed the bank's transaction history on the table. I placed my audit beside it. I placed her most recent report beside the audit. Then I pointed to 3 figures, one from the bank statement, one from my audit, one from her report, and I let them sit there in a row on her kitchen table next to the sandwiches she had cut diagonally. The bank's figure, my audit figure, her figure, 3 different numbers for the same account on the same date. I said I wanted to understand the discrepancy. She looked at the 3 numbers for a long time. Priya was writing something in her notepad. The pitcher of water sat between us, catching the light. Josephine said there were some expenses she had not fully documented yet. I said, "Which expenses?" She said, "Management expenses." I said, "Could she show me the receipts?" She said they were not all organized. I said I understood and that I was happy to help her organize them since that was my professional specialty. She looked at me. For the first time since I had sat down, she looked at me directly, and I saw something in her face that I had not expected. Not guilt exactly. Exhaustion. The specific exhaustion of a person who has been maintaining something for 6 years and has understood in the past 60 seconds that the maintaining is over. She did not have receipts. We both knew that before she said it. She said she did not have receipts for all of it. I asked for what she did have. She went to her office and came back with a folder that contained 3 receipts for minor maintenance expenses totaling $847. $847 against $147,000 in withdrawals. I placed the folder with her 3 receipts beside the bank statement showing 18 withdrawals. I did not say anything. The numbers said it. What Josephine said next, I want to give you precisely because it is important. She said she had needed the money. She said things had been hard after her divorce, and she had told herself she would pay it back. She said she had meant to pay it back. She said 6 years was a long time, and she knew how it looked, but she had genuinely intended to make it right before the estate closed. She looked at me and she said, "I knew you were doing well." She said, "I knew you didn't need it the way I did." I sat with that sentence. I knew you didn't need it. As if my grandmother's intention, equal shares, both granddaughters, written in plain language in a properly executed will, could be informally revised based on Josephine's assessment of our relative need. As if the green ledger and the 40 years of careful living and the Sunday evenings updating the columns were resources to be redirected based on who Josephine decided needed them most. I looked at Josephine and I felt something I had not expected to feel in this kitchen on this Saturday morning. I felt sorry for her, not for what she had done, for the specific smallness of thinking that what she had done was a reasonable response to difficulty. That taking from a dead woman's estate and sending her other granddaughter 72 fabricated reports was a solution. Some problems make people smaller, and this one had made Josephine very small, and she was sitting across from me with her 3 receipts, and her exhaustion and her, "I meant to pay it back," and I could see exactly how she had gotten here 1 month at a time. I did not say any of that. I just said I was sorry things had been hard. I meant it. Then I placed the repayment agreement on the table. Priya had prepared it. It was clean and precise. A civil debt acknowledgement and structured repayment agreement, legally enforceable, laying out the total amount owed, the repayment schedule, the interest rate which I had set at 0, and the consequences of default, which included a civil filing and a referral to the estate court for review of her administrator conduct. I said I did not want to go to court. I said I did not want to involve the estate court, which would make the misconduct a matter of public record and would likely result in professional and legal consequences beyond repayment. I said I wanted the money back in a structure she could manage, and I wanted the estate formally closed, and I wanted it done without a courtroom if she was willing. I said if she was not willing, I had everything I needed to file by Monday. Josephine looked at the agreement for a long time. She looked at Priya's notepad. She looked at her 3 receipts sitting beside 18 withdrawals. Then she looked at me, and she said something I had not written on any legal pad or prepared any response to. She said Grandma would be so ashamed of me. I said I thought our grandmother would want the money to go where she left it. She said that was fair. She picked up the pen. She signed. The repayment began the following month. The estate was formally closed 8 weeks later through the probate court, a process that required Josephine to file a final accounting which, with Priya's oversight, reflected the actual transactions rather than the invented ones. The final accounting is a public document now. It says what it says. I did not ask for that outcome specifically. The formal accounting was a requirement of the court closure process, not a choice I made. But I will not pretend I was unhappy with it. My grandmother kept every receipt. She believed the record should be accurate. The record is accurate now. I want to tell you about the drive home from Josephine's house because it is the part of this story I have thought about most. Priya was in the passenger seat. We drove for 20 minutes without saying much because there was not much to say that the morning had not already said. Then Priya said something I have kept. She said, "You know what I noticed?" I said, "What?" She said, "You never raised your voice once." I said, "I know." She said most people in that room would have been shouting by the time the 3 receipts came out. I said shouting was not going to get the money back. She said that was true. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Your grandmother taught you well." I had to look at the road for a while after that. Josephine and I have not had a family dinner since that Saturday. We are in contact through the repayment confirmation emails that arrive monthly. The same 15th of the month that her fabricated reports used to arrive, which is a coincidence I notice every time and have decided to treat as neutral rather than ironic. I do not know if we will repair what was there before. I know that what was there before was built on a foundation I did not understand correctly. She was present when I was not. She was there for the Sunday dinners and the small daily rhythms of our grandmother's last years, and I was 3 hours away building a career, and I am grateful for what she gave Vera in those years. She was also sending me fabricated reports on the 15th of every month. Both of those things are true at the same time. I have had to make room for both of them. I reopened my grandmother's green ledger 2 months after that Saturday. I had kept it since the estate cleared, taken it from the kitchen drawer when I was packing the house, carried it home in my bag, put it in my own kitchen drawer where I see it every morning. I opened it on a Sunday evening after dinner. I read the last entry, electric bill, paid, receipt attached. Then I turned to the next blank page, and I started a new column. Not because I needed to, because some habits are worth keeping, because order is a form of love and my grandmother taught me that, and it is the truest thing I know, because the numbers always tell the truth if you ask them the right question, and I intend to keep asking. That is my story. 6 years of fabricated reports, 72 months of fiction delivered on the 15th, one Tuesday morning with a spreadsheet and a cold cup of coffee and my grandmother's voice asking the right question. If someone in your life is managing something of yours that you have not verified independently, verify it. Not because the people you trust are untrustworthy, because your grandmother kept every receipt for a reason, and the reason was not that she suspected people. The reason was that accurate records protect the people you love from the conversations they should never have to have. Check the figures. Keep the ledger. And if someone who knows exactly what you do for a living sends you 72 fabricated reports anyway, Trust that the numbers are waiting to tell you. They always are. Share this with someone who needs to hear it tonight. Drop a comment and tell me which part of the story stayed with you. Hit subscribe and I will see you in the next one.